Strength-Based Marketing. I'm Pat Dewar. Today's show is all about retention, reducing the turnover in your business. My guest, Tim Cosby, has an amazing program that we're going to talk about. So Tim, why don't we just go right to it? Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, Pat. Good to be here with you.
Thanks. I want to get right into what's your story? How'd you get to where you're at right now?
Yeah, wow. Well, I started 10 years ago. I started a coaching business. I hired a business coach, and we worked together for a while. And one day he said to me, he was quite a bit older than I am. And one day he said to me, he said, Tim, I've kind of seen what you do. You're a really good networker, good coach. What would you think about partnering together and designing a training that we could take into organizations and start training people how to coach? So that was in 2010, and we started doing that. We called ourselves Two Men in a Trunk, and we didn't have any big financial backing. It was just kind of us two. And he's an instructional design and program creator kind of a person, and just a brilliant guy. He's kind of, I call him the man behind the curtain. I'm kind of the face of the organization. And we started doing that, and people started coming and they said, wow, this really works. What else do you guys have? And so kind of time went on, and about, I guess it was about 3 years after that, a local college contracted us to come and start what they called the Center for Empowerment Coaching on their campus. So we were there for about 3.5 years. We trained, equipped, certified about 175 faculty, students, and staff during that time. It was great, but we helped them reduce their turnover. Basically, they call it their freshman retention rate. So the rate of freshmen that actually stay and come back for their sophomore year. And when we started with them, it was about 62%. And when we left them, it was about 84%. And we saved them, it wasn't all us, but we saved them, a couple $1 million over 3.5 years. So then in 2016, we started another company called Real Retention. And that's when I met the person that I'm working directly with now. And we just said, let's take the coaching skills and process because we're professional coaches and we train professional coaches. Let's take those skills and process and apply it to management, because what we discovered was all the problems that companies were having, whether it was turnover or absenteeism or lost productivity, whatever it was, we found that the root cause was disengagement. In other words, employees were disengaged, right? And we went down another layer and found out that the root cause of that disengagement was this kind of cause and effect circular relationship between management practices and organizational culture. And we said, okay, if you really want to make a difference in a company, let's train the managers, because most managers aren't trained. Most managers don't know how to develop people. Most managers don't know how to coach. And so we started Conversational Management in 2016. And then, so that was kind of a product of our company called Real Retention. And so whenever I'd meet somebody and they say, hey, Tim, what do you do? I said, well, I own Real Retention and I help companies retain their key talent. And they were like, oh, really? Well, tell me more about that. So then I was able to kind of tell them about, we have this product called Conversational Management, and we work with your managers and basically train them how to use a coaching approach so that they can coach, develop, and help people instead of just telling them what to do. So that's kind of how everything started.
I love it. I mean, it's amazing the number of employees that are disengaged or even to the point of destructive behavior,
right,
in the organization, acidic behavior. The percentages are really high, 30+% a lot of times and more. Yep. And the millions of dollars that people are spending, because many times either they leave or they create a scenario where somebody leaves.
Sure.
So I look at what you're doing and I love it. And even to think back, 50 years ago when the earth was cooling and I got into the workforce, um, there was a culture that was out there. At that time, over 50% of the managers that were at the C level around the country were former military.
Mm.
Well, my son went through basic training, and I know they always talked real politely to him, right?
Yeah,
No,
sure.
they barked. And so that was the management by hammer was kind of
Yeah.
the way to do things. Well, now management by hammer is called a hostile work environment.
Yeah.
And what it sounds like you're doing is equipping these managers to be the coach and mentor, which is now what's legal,
Right.
and creating better relationships, and in creating better relationships, being a better leader in their organization. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it is. That's a good summary. You used a term right there that I want to kind of focus on. You talked about mentoring and coaching. And we make a distinction between those two. I think those two are awesome tools. We look at mentoring as pouring in and coaching as pulling out.
Hmm.
And if you're an expert, then you kind of have the answers. People come to you, they ask you questions, you tell them. So it's all about kind of telling people. If you're a coach, you ask questions and you listen to people and you pull things out of them, and that gives them more autonomy and it really empowers them. So since we were a coaching company, we're professional coaches, so we understand what coaching is and we know what mentoring is too. Most companies use mentoring, they don't use coaching. They call it coaching, but what they really mean is that, yeah, I had an athletic coach, I had a basketball coach, he was a pretty cool guy, and that's kind of what I do. I'm like, well, I'm glad you had that, but that's not what we do. So we call coaching helping people to change without telling them what to do. So if you stop and think about that, it's kind of completely upside down from the way our generation kind of learned how to lead, right? And it's really really powerful. Coaches, I mean, most managers don't listen very well, so they need good listening skills. They don't know how to ask good open-ended questions, so we teach them how to do that. And they're not really good at meeting a person where they are and helping them to get to where they want to be, which is really what coaching is. In fact, it came out of the 15th century, and it was a literal coach pulled by a horse that would meet a person where they are and take them where they wanted to go. And that's really what coaching does, but it doesn't tell them what to do. It asks them and gets their buy-in.
That is so beautiful. For the last 6 years, I've been teaching professional development classes on dealing with difficult people and leadership class, communication skills classes. And one of the things that shows up is I ask people, raise your hand if you've ever been in a confrontation with somebody where you thought you were being assertive, but by their words or their actions, they accused you of being aggressive. And invariably, 80% of the room raise their hand. I go, oh, okay. Why don't we look at that? Because what if there was a way to be assertive without being perceived as aggressive? And they're like, tell me more.
Yeah.
And I always just kind of, real quick, I just say, look, take these three words: passive, assertive, and aggressive. With the definition of passive being lose-win, assertive win-win, and aggressive is win-lose. Think of one of those situations where you thought you were being assertive, but they accused you of being aggressive, and go back in and look at what was happening in your mind. Think about what was it about? And then I say, okay, raise your hand if in that confrontation, all that you were really trying to do is show that your information, your way, or that you were right. And most of the hands go up.
Right.
And so I kind of pick somebody that is a little thicker skinned, can play with me. And I go, okay, let's say that confrontation's with me. Now, if it was you, Tim, I go, Tim, let me make sure I get this right. All you're trying to do is show me that your information, your way, or that you is right. Is that correct? And you would say,
Sure.
sure. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, then that means I'm what?
Wrong.
Wrong. You're just wrong. You know, I
uh,
go, that doesn't feel good. You're right. I'm wrong. Awesome. Yeah. If I get that right, it means you win and I what?
yeah, lose.
And which one was the definition of win lose? Aggressive.
Yeah.
And everybody said just goes, oh.
Yeah, right.
And so I think this is where you're going. And tell me, I'd love to know if this is kind of some of the essence, if I'm hearing it right. Because I always tell people, write this challenge to yourself for tomorrow. How can I make others right more often?
Yeah, there you go.
And they're like, but Pat, they were wrong. I go, I know they're wrong. I know you're wrong. I get it. Okay, you need a decoder ring. Here's the decoder ring. Ask rather than tell.
Yeah, there
you ask the questions like a good coach.
Yeah.
To lead them to being right, because if they're right, you win. And what do they pay us for? Results or ego, right? So, I mean, am I speaking your language? Am I on the right wavelength with you on this stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. And as you know, managers are usually promoted to that position because they did good work, right? Not really because they understood how to motivate people and how to develop them, and because it's all about the employee. If you're the manager, then you're measured by how much your people can get done. Not by how much you can do, right? So like you just said there in that illustration, all of a sudden the camera focuses on the other person. It's like, tell me about that. How did you get to that conclusion? What makes sense to you? That kind of a thing. And that's not the way my generation was taught. What we're finding is that it's the way that millennials want to lead and be led. And a lot of the managers that are, Xers or boomers like me, don't know how to do that. So we're coming into organizations and kind of equipping everybody with this new mindset and skill set that actually puts the focus on the other person and really empowers the other person so that they take 100% ownership, which is at the end of the day what you want.
That's beautiful. So you're delivering now. Now, when I think about this, what kind of results are you actually able to create? I know you said you saved that, increase the revenue of that one college by several $1 million, which the cost of college is so expensive. I get that.
Sure.
But obviously you're doing this all over the country. So what are you seeing in the way of real results for the company?
Yeah. Well, here's an illustration. We work with a transportation company, had about 8,000 employees. They had 53 terminals across the United States, and each of those terminals had a terminal manager. And they were experiencing a 62% turnover among their terminal managers. So just stop and think about that. It's like, really? So when they first contacted us, they're like, okay, so we've got a big problem because we need the truck drivers and we need the frontline supervisors, but we really need the terminal managers. And if we keep losing them, we're not going to be able to exist. So we came in and we took them through our conversational management program. And I traveled all over the United States training, 20 to 25 terminal managers, union guys, really tough, gruff kind of guys. And the response that we got from them was really interesting because you'd look at these trucker guys and, we kind of look at them like, oh, you're really tough and you're not going to really like this kind of mamby-pamby kind of stuff, right? And they responded just the opposite. They said, we could see how this would work. This makes sense to us. In fact, we want you to come to our location and train the union leaders because they're the ones that need to know how to do this. So we never got that far. I'd love to do that, but we never got that far. We worked with them for about a year. And in that period of a year, they went from 62% turnover to 19% turnover.
Nice.
And we saved them, $3.2 million.
So did they have a pretty good return on ROI? I mean, you don't charge 3.2 million, do you?
Oh, no. It was their return on investment was 219%.
Nice.
So
Eh,
they were pretty happy, you know. And we trained about 175 leaders there over a period of a year. So, you know, they were seeing those kinds of responses, but beyond that, like I was training their sales team. They had about 17 people on their sales team. And they said, Tim, this is somewhat familiar to us because if you're in sales, you better know how to listen. You better know how to ask questions because you can't just tell people what to do, right? So they said, so we get that. This makes sense, but this is really kind of putting some wheels on our wagon for us. But they said what we didn't see before was that this is going to work between us, not just from us to the customer, but between us. So the sales manager, the VP of sales, called me one day and he said, Tim, I just got to tell you this story. One of my guys came to my office and he's asking me a question and he's kind of confused and stuck and really doesn't know what to do. And he said, 6 months ago, I would have said, well, here's what you need to do. And, you know, I got a phone call to make, so let me know how that goes. But he said, I didn't. I invited him in. He sat down. He said, you know, tell me more about this. What are you experiencing? And he said, over the next 20 minutes, I just coached him. I used the skills that you taught us and I just coached him. And he walked out of the office with his own solution to the problem. And he said, I didn't have to solve the problem for him. And he said, that's a new place for us. We've not done that before. And so he was like, thank you, because this is adding value to our company beyond just reducing the turnover, which was their immediate problem, but it's helping us internally build better relationships and get 100% out of the other people.
Absolutely. I heard this one statement one time, and it said, people embrace what we create.
Yeah.
And I think about it. If our job is coach and mentor, however that comes out, if our job as managers is to replicate ourselves in our people and replace ourselves, then it means that the people that work for you, they're supposed to grow up to a position where they can fill your shoes.
Yeah. Right.
And you can move to whatever next level it is for you. And so I love that. Now, how long does it take to go through your process? Like when you work with a company, what's the engagement normally? You were talking about a year, but you were also going all over. So obviously you were in and out of each location in a certain amount of time.
Sure.
So how long does it take to learn this stuff?
Well, I'll talk to you about pre-COVID and after COVID, post-COVID, right? Because everything changed for us. Our whole business model changed overnight. I mean, our whole business model is based on going to the client, doing, you know, face-to-face 2-day trainings or whatever it was. Well, that's not happening so much anymore. So we're completely virtual now. So like October 6th, I think, is our next virtual cohort. We can train 100 managers at a time. And we use Zoom like this. We put them in breakout rooms and they can practice the skills. Within a period of a month, a manager can get through our entire program. And then they get access to our online support platform where they can continue to practice the skills that they learned. That's like a 10-month access, and then they can renew that. So to just learn the core skills and start practicing it, you know, you're looking at 2 or 3 months, and they're really off to a good start.
I love that because I usually tell people in my workshops, because just like you, I was doing 200 workshops a year for the last 6 years.
Wow.
March, just like that, I got a recall notice the middle of the day, email, you're coming home.
Yeah.
And 48 hours later, I'm doing webinars 2-3 days a week. In fact, the reason why we had to do it at this, record this today at this time, I was on a webinar.
Sure.
Until late. And so I get it. And it's fascinating though, this interaction can still create the same result. And so, you know, about 90 days and you can create massive change. One of my mentors used to say, you're what you are and where you are because of what's gone into your mind.
Mm,
You want to change what you are and where you are, you have to change what goes in your mind from this point. And that was the
mm,
biggest challenge
yep.
for a lot of people, is that they don't tend to change right away. People change when they want to. Now, here's what I'd love to know. So we've seen kind of an overview. We've seen some of your results. If someone wanted to get engaged with you to hire your firm and to really move forward, because they understand we got to reduce our retention. We're, in fact, with the unemployment going through this big dip in the last 6 months or so, every employee is even more important than ever before. How do they get a hold of you? What do you do to bring on new clients?
Yeah. Good question. Thanks for asking that. The easiest way is just to go to our website, realretention.com. And there's a place to contact us, a contact form on there, phone number. And we start out with a Zoom call like this and find out, what are you experiencing? Is this a good fit? Here's how the program works. Here's kind of the structure of it. Here's the pricing. What do you think? Kind of a conversation. So that's probably the easiest way for them to reach out.
How do you find out, like, I mean, you just ask them, I guess, about their turnover, and I mean, that would, because to me that would validate what you're doing so easily.
Well,
All the things that you've said.
yeah, and as you know, people have to be experiencing a certain level of pain before they reach out. So sometimes it's that turnover. Sometimes the pain is the fear of losing, that 29-year-old whiz kid or girl kind of a thing that just came to their company and they don't want to lose that person. They're a key talent. Um, or maybe they're trying to change their culture and they're not quite sure how to do that. Maybe they've taken an engagement survey and their engagement is low. There could be a number of reasons, but we find that out. And our ideal client, I would say, is a CEO, a high growth CEO in a company that doesn't really have a talent development department yet. And they've been growing so fast that they haven't had time to put that together, kind of a thing. And we're kind of a turnkey HR kind of talent development company. And so we can come in and we say, we do all the work for you. Basically, it's done for you. But we find out all that stuff in that initial conversation. And if here's one thing that we've found for sure, we start with the CEO or the owner or the president, somebody in the C-suite, because if that person doesn't own this and buy into this, it doesn't work. So if in a conversation like this, I discovered that the CEO really just wanted to fix their managers and they didn't want to change, I'm like, I'm wasting your time, you know. So that's what we do.
I love that old adage that management replicates itself in its people.
Yeah.
It's whatever you do in moderation, your kids will do to excess.
Yeah.
Here's some of you parents out there. But the point is that, if it doesn't start at the top, it's not going to be embraced by anyone else.
Yeah.
So I love that. What size company is the type that you would say this is ideal?
Yeah, man, I don't know yet, Pat, if there is such a thing for us. Working with a construction company right now that has 50 people. And we work with a company that had 8,000 employees that were spread all across the United States. What we found is that number one, the CEO has to be willing to make changes. Um, and what really works best is if they're in a period of high growth and they really want to start doing some leadership development and equipping their managers because they're building this thing so fast. And that's what works. That's the best kind of situation for us. We've
I
come
totally
into
get that.
we've come into companies kind of at the bottom or maybe in the middle because maybe an HR person was really frustrated or whatever. And what we found was that doesn't always work well because sometimes the executives at the top are like, just do your job, just shut up and do your job. We don't really care. And it's like, well, that would not be a good fit for us, right? So, yeah, we do that kind of vetting and just ask questions and say, what do you think? Does this sound like a good fit for you guys?
That's beautiful. Folks, I hope that you'll really reach out to Tim and his organization. And the website they should go to again, Tim, is
realretention.com.
realretention.com. Because if you're C-suite, having challenges, under pressure, overwhelmed, really trying to grow and develop your people and want to retain the top talent, I'm like, duh, why wouldn't you reach out to Tim and his organization at realretention.com and engage them? Because the real world ROI on developing your people is massive, and it has lasting impact. Because if you retain somebody for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years or more, and they've got those skills, wow, how's that going to affect the people they mentor to replace them in their position? Beautiful stuff. I encourage you, take action. I'm a big believer that information, which you're receiving some good information, with implementation creates transformation. People that take action get results. Thanks for being on today and watching this, and I hope you'll engage with Tim right away. This is Pat Dewar,